In economics class today, we shall be looking at demand theory 2. Under this theory 2, we want to look at types of demand that we have, looking at price elasticity of demand, and under price elasticity of demand, we want to look at kinds of price elasticity of demand that we have, likewise the calculation involved. Types of demand. Number 1, complementary demand. It is a type where two commodities are combined together in order to give a satisfaction. That is, in complementary demand, two commodities are combined together that will give a satisfaction. And what are we talking about? That for you to get a satisfaction, two or more commodities are needed. For example, you want to write. You must have a pencil and exercise book. The two commodities will give you a satisfaction. You want to take bread and butter. The combination of the two commodities will give you a satisfaction. So that is, increase in demand of one will lead to increase in the demand of the other commodity. So the implication is that the producer of butter and producer of bread, two of them will have increase, provided if there is an increase in one. So if there is an increase in butter, there is probability of increasing demand for bread, because the two goods will give a satisfaction. Now, using pencil and exercise book will give a satisfaction because they are complementary goods. So increase in the demand for pencil will lead to increase in the demand for exercise book. 2, competitive demand. It implies demand for a commodity in place of another commodity. Such commodities compete for use. Here, two or more commodities can be in an environment or in an economy. They are competing for use. Take for instance, Nokia phone and BlackBerry phone. The two goods are in the economy for just a purpose, for communication. Now, if there is an increase in demand for Nokia phone, it means there will be a decrease in the demand for the other one, because you can use Nokia phone in place of a BlackBerry phone. So what we are trying to understand in demand is that increase in demand for one will decrease demand for substitute. So if there is an increase in demand for Nokia phone, then there will be decrease in the demand for BlackBerry phone. Or a situation where we have 40-leaf exercise book and 60-leaf exercise book. If the demand for 40-leaf exercise book increases, then there will be a decrease in the demand for 60-leaf in the market. So because the two goods are competing for use. Number 3, derived demand. It occurs when demand for a commodity is not required for direct satisfaction, but for the production of another commodities, which can give direct satisfaction. E.g., demand for factors of production is derived demand because they are demanded for what they can help to produce. So if, for instance, we are looking at bread. Bread will give direct satisfaction, but the flour and other input that they use, they are derived demand, because we don't just need flour for any other thing, but to give us satisfaction, that is production of bread. So we are not demanding for flour, but we are demanding for bread. So in this case, flour is not a direct satisfaction, but bread is a direct satisfaction. Now we have said factors of production. Factors of production happen to be a derived demand because we are not demanding for it, but what it can produce. Not only that, let's look at kerosene and stove. We don't just need kerosene and stove, but what they can give to us, that is making goods for us, cooking. So kerosene, stove, they are derived demand. But after cooking, maybe rice, stew, and so on and so forth, all these are direct satisfaction. So in derived demand, we have two commodities: direct satisfaction and indirect satisfaction. So when you say indirect satisfaction, that is, we just need them in order to produce direct goods that can give us direct satisfaction. Number 4, composite demand. It is when a commodity can be put to several alternative uses. That is, a commodity, if it can have several uses, it becomes composite demand. For example, the composite demand for groundnut oil is made up of the overall demand for groundnut oil for its various uses. Cooking. With the help of groundnut oil, we can cook. With the help of groundnut oil, we can make soap. And with the help of groundnut oil, they can make what? Margarine. So meaning that groundnut oil is an example of a composite demand because it can be used for different purposes. Price elasticity of demand. It measures the relative responsiveness of quantity demanded of a commodity to a change in price of the commodity. In price elasticity of demand, we are trying to look at the reaction of a demand, that is quantity demanded, whenever there is a change in the price. That is, take for instance, if the price of a commodity increases from 5 naira to 10 naira, what's going to be the quantity demanded? Will it be positive reaction or negative reaction? So that is, price elasticity of demand examines the reaction of quantity demanded when there is a change in the price of the commodity. And the reaction can either be, as I've said, negative reaction or positive reaction. Calculation of price elasticity of demand. For us to know if demand is positively reacted or negatively reacted, we go through this calculation, and the formula before us is this: price elasticity of demand. And what the formula is saying that we try to look for the percentage change in quantity demanded and the percentage change in price. When you look for this, we'll be able to know if the reaction is positive or negative. So when you say percentage change in quantity demanded, it implies that Q2 minus Q1 divided by Q1 times 100. When we say Q2, we are talking about the present quantity of that particular commodity. And when we say Q1, we are talking about past quantity of that particular commodity in question divided by the past quantity of that particular commodity times 100 in order to know the percentage. Then the second one, percentage change in price. This, we are trying to look at the changes in price between the current and the past. So when you say P2, we are talking about the current price. P1, we are talking about the previous price of the commodity divided by the previous price times 100 because we want to find the percentage. That is, we want to find the change that will occur. So at the end of this, when we substitute the value in percentage change in quantity demanded into this and substitute the value in percentage change in price into this, then we will be able to know what the price elasticity of demand is. Kinds of price elasticity of demand. Number 1, unit elasticity of demand. It occurs when the change in quantity demanded is equal to change in price. So when we are talking about unit elasticity, at times they can call it unitary. It's a situation where the change in quantity demanded and change in price happen to be the same. From the graph before us, this is price axis, this is quantity axis, and this is demand curve that we understand to be downward sloping. The change from P1 to P2 is equal to the change from Q1 to Q2. That what makes it to be unit elasticity of demand. If 50% is the change in price, then definitely there is also 50% change in quantity demanded. That's what we call unit elasticity of demand. And the coefficients of unit elasticity of demand is always equal to 1. It is after the calculation, we are going to have the answer to be 1, although it's going to be minus 1, but we ignore the negative sign and interpret the value. So that is, in unit elasticity of demand, we have the coefficient to be minus 1. So you ignore the negative sign, interpret the 1. So it's always equal 1. Number 2, elastic demand. It implies change in quantity demanded is greater than change in price. Its coefficient is always greater than 1. That is, greater than 1. Now from the diagram, price axis, quantity axis, demand curve. The change from P1 to P2, when you compare it with change from Q1 to Q2, you observe that the change in quantity demanded is greater than change in price. This will make it to be elastic demand, where the coefficient is greater than 1. Although after the calculation, you are going to have minus 1, but you ignore the negative side and interpret the value, which is greater than 1. Number 3, inelastic demand. It occurs where the change in quantity demanded is less than change in price, and its coefficient is always less than 1. Here, when you calculate price elasticity of demand, you are going to have the answer to be minus 1, as I've said, but you are still going to ignore the sign, interpret the value. So if the value is less than 1, it implies that the price elasticity of demand is inelastic. Looking at the diagram before us, we have the price axis, we have the quantity axis, then we have the demand curve to be downward sloping. Between the P1, P2, which is the price, and Q1, Q2, you observe that the change in price is greater than the change in quantity, which makes it to be inelastic. That is, the change here is less than the change here. So that's why we call it inelastic demand, where the coefficient is always less than 1, because the change here is smaller while the change here is larger. So when you substitute, you are going to have less than 1. Number 4, perfectly elastic demand. This implies there is a change in quantity demanded with a constant price. The coefficient is always infinite, that is infinity. Looking at the diagram before us, we can see the price axis, we can see the quantity axis. The price axis happens to have P star or P asterisk. But looking at the quantity, we have Q1, Q2, Q3. There is a change in quantity demanded where the price is constant. So we call it perfectly elastic demand. Number 5, perfectly inelastic demand. Looking at the diagram, we have the quantity axis here, the price axis here. And in quantity axis, we have quantity being fixed. But in time of price, when the price is P1, we have the quantity axis fixed. When the price is P2, we have the quantity axis. We have it to be your Q star still. P3, we still have the quantity being fixed. So what perfectly inelastic demand is trying to tell us is that there is a fixed quantity demanded with changes in price of the commodity. So in terms of its coefficient, the coefficient is to be zero elasticity of demand. That is, it has zero elasticity of demand to be the coefficients. Working on price elasticity of demand. Periods, price, quantity demanded. Period 1, 18 naira to be the price, quantity demanded 120. Period 2, price 15 naira, quantity demanded 160. Now calculate the price elasticity of demand. Then 2, interpret the result. That is Roman figure 2. Work it. The first thing is to write out the formula. Price elasticity of demand equal percentage change in quantity demanded divided by percentage change in price. Percentage change in quantity demanded equal Q2 minus Q1 divided by Q1 times 100. From our question, Q2 is 160, while Q1 is 120. Divided by 120 times 100. And the change between 160 and 120 is 40 over 120 times 100. So 40 over 120 times 100. This again this. Here 1, here 3. So 100 divided by 3, we should be able to have 33.33%. Percentage change in quantity demanded equal 33.3%. Percentage change in price equal P2 minus P1 divided by P1 times 100. And our P2 is 50 naira. Our P1 is 80 naira over P1, which is 80 naira times 100. The difference will be minus 30 over 80 times 100. And when we cut, so at the end, we are going to have this minus 300 over 8. And the final answer of answer here should be, here is 3, 24. And we have 6 left. In 60, 8 in 60 should give us 7. That's left 56. And you take away, we have 40 in 45. So we have minus 37.5. Percentage change in price equal minus 37.5%. Price elasticity of demand will now be percentage change in quantity demanded, where our calculation was 33.3%, divided by percentage change in price, where the calculation was minus 37.5%. So here we are going to have minus 0.88 and so on. So the final answer will now be minus 0.9. Now looking at the result, we have it to be minus 0.9, and we said we should ignore the negative sign. So we have 0.9 to be the result. Interpretation. It implies that price elasticity of demand is less than 1. And among the kinds of price elasticity of demand that we have discussed, the one that happened to be less than 1, it is inelastic demand. So, looking at our table, see the data that we use in solving the price elasticity of demand, it indicated that price elasticity of demand of that data happened to be inelastic demand. Examples. Number 1. When elasticity is 0, demand curve is A. Perfectly elastic, B. Perfectly inelastic, C. Concave, D. Downward sloping. The right answer is B. Perfectly inelastic. A. Perfectly inelastic. We've said it when we describe kinds of price elasticity of demand. Now we have unit, elastic, inelastic, perfectly elastic, perfectly inelastic. And zero elasticity of demand indicates perfectly inelastic demand. A situation where there is a change in price with constant quantity demanded. So perfectly elastic demand indicates fixed price, change in quantity demanded. Perfectly inelastic indicates fixed quantity but changes in price. C. Concave is not related to this. D. Although downward sloping, demand curve is downward sloping, but we are talking about elasticity in this situation. So zero elasticity of demand indicates perfectly inelastic demand. So the right answer is B. Question 2. If two commodities are good substitutes for one another, e.g. butter and margarine, an increase in the demand for one will reduce the demand for the other. This type of demand is called A. Composite demand, B. Elastic demand, C. Derived demand, D. Competitive demand. The question has already solved itself because it's talking about substitute goods. And substitute goods indicate competitive. Right? So in this question, the right answer is D. Competitive demand. That is, in competitive demand, a commodity can be used in place of another. So if you cannot use butter, you can use margarine. The two goods are competing for use. So A cannot be right because composite demand is talking about when the commodity can be used for different purposes. B, we are talking about type of good here, not type of price elasticity of demand. Derived demand is not appropriate in this situation because we are talking about two goods that are substitute. So the right answer is competitive demand. From the diagram above, DO is the original demand curve. D1 is A fall in the demand curve, B, a rise in the demand curve, C, an extension in the demand curve, D, a contraction in the demand curve, E, none of these curves. Looking at the curve very well, demand curve shifts to the right, and this is an indication of shift in demand or change in demand. Therefore, the right answer is letter E, none of these curves.